welcome our keynote lunchtime speaker who came all the way from Wallaceburg, Walpole Island, which I remember from Powwow days, Dr. Samantha Boushart. Can we have a nice round of applause, please? You can walk around with her.
Okay. Bonjour. Just going to open my book here. It has my notes. So thank you for that introduction, Miigwech. So I took we ended up on the road for about 10 hours yesterday. And I was really looking forward to the drive because it's not very often that I just get to be with myself. And my partner drove. He's outside. He didn't want to come in and make me nervous. But it was nice to just be the passenger and just to witness the change of the environment as I drove here. You can really feel the minerals, the rocks. I was really grateful to see them. So my English name is Samantha Boushart. And I'll just introduce myself in the language. Obviously not my first language, but I'm learning. Wasno de indigenous cause, Gnu do dem deshkanzibi and donjabat, and Ishnabe kwe and Dao. So my spirit name is Wasno de or Wasano de, which is the Northern Lights. I was given that name by Maingan Henry. My mother grew up on the Chippewa, the Thames First Nation, and she left there when she was a teenager for London, and met my dad in London, who is a German man. Well, his family settled from Germany in Canada in the 1700s, so. And I just learned recently that the Germans had some sort of obsession with our culture, and they have a little First Nation, little spots in Germany where they really they value us. So I don't know if that's why my dad found my mom. I have no idea, but I thought it was interesting. So my bio there just told you a little bit about the roles and responsibilities that I have right now. So one of my biggest roles is as a healthcare provider. Through the being a family physician, it's just meant a lot of years of my head in a lot of books. So I really learned to be in my head for most of my life. And for the last few years, I'm trying to get out of here and back to my heart, which is work in itself. But I also, part of my role, and it's not defined by the jobs that I hold, but, there's a lot of advocacy work. There's just a lot of using my voice as an Indigenous woman and using my energy to help create change in whatever positive ways that I can. So that ends up putting me in a lot of political spaces and with a lot of men, white old men, and trying to fit in. I don't know. I do my best, but when I was invited to come here, I was really grateful. I've spent some time out here on this land, and I do want to acknowledge all of the women and all of the elders in the room. I always find it a little funny when people ask me to come speak, because I know there's all these people in the room that carry a lot of knowledge, and so I go, what can I really teach anybody or say? But I've spent some time here on the island as a younger woman, and it's always been a really beautiful place, and I just want to acknowledge all of the people here and the people that came before all the people here and how they identify themselves. I acknowledge and I'm grateful to be here with you guys. When I was preparing for this presentation, it's always a fight. Do I do a PowerPoint? Because that's in our world, we do PowerPoint presentations, but I really hate putting them together because I want to be free to use my hand to draw. Like, to put it into a file is really, I don't know, it doesn't work well. So I never prepared anything, and I just wrote some notes on my drive up here. And taking into account like the name of the conference, the residential school, I thought I would start by acknowledging, or I guess sharing with you a little bit about my connection to that process. And now I didn't know about my lineage and my connection to those places until I think 1 year ago. But the first time I felt it was many years before that, and that was the first time I heard about the residential school system. And I was in my first year of medical school when that came to my attention. And I just remember the feeling of it, like your whole body just lights up, and you just feel this weight and this, I went through all these things like anger, and I didn't even know my personal connection to it until recently, but so my mother's mother, my grandmother, Caretha Fisher, who used to be in Albert, she was the youngest of 7 siblings, and all of her siblings older than her were taken to the schools, and she was left because she was the youngest. She got to stay. And I just heard that story from an aunt last year, and it just made so much sense to me. Like why my mother was the way she was, why my grandmother was the way she was, and why I am who I am. And it just put things into context with me so beautifully. And I know there was a lot of pain, and like coming to that realization wasn't easy, but it's helped heal, right? And now I can understand my being in the context of the people that came before me, and now understand how it translates forward, right? Because with that awareness and translating that into a healing, I don't pass that weight to my daughter, who's running around here somewhere, if you see her. So I wanted to talk a little bit about health. I did become a physician because I wanted people to be well. And, I think when I was in public school was my first realization that, like, for some reason, my mom's side of the family seemed to be living a different experience than my father's side of the family. And it was like this, like, why is that? And I was very curious about it from a young age, asking a lot of questions. Well, why? And nobody had answers for me, not until I was much older. But I think that's what led me to where I am right now, is just the curiosity and that drive to understand, and then also to use that understanding to make something better, for my daughter, and for those that come after. So I get a lot of time to sit with people in my work, like to sit with people one-on-one and to build relationship with them, and to hear their stories and to get to know their bodies, right? So it's a really interesting job. It's really interesting work that I do, and I never for a second take it for granted. And it is my clients, or the people I'm trying to be a helper to, that actually teach me, right? And I acknowledge them that way. Like in medicine, there's always this hierarchy or this implied power to being a doctor, which I never liked. I didn't like it when people gave me their power, and I still don't. I remind them that I'm actually here to serve you. I'm here to tell you what I know from a bunch of books. And then you got to choose for yourself what you want. And I'm not going to tell you what, but, I'll advise you, right? That's how I see my work. And my colleagues in my profession don't see it necessarily the same way as I see it. And I think right now in the healthcare system, that's one of the big issues, right? Because they don't see the truth, and then they get stuck in their head with their knowledge, and they put their knowledge above what's in front of them, and nobody, and everyone can feel that, and like all human beings can feel that, but somehow the doctors, I don't know. I don't have a lot of friends who are doctors, even though I am a doctor. I never could really relate to my colleagues necessarily. But I feel like moving forward in the future, they're trying to do better in that education system to make more well-rounded helpers. I've noticed, anyhow. I sit on the admissions committee for the medical school, so I noticed that they're starting to not value as much of the grades, right, as the ability of that person to be a good communicator or be able to be present in a space with somebody and not just have everything in their head. So there's hope moving forward. So I've only been in the practice of medicine for 4 years, and I've sat, for hundreds of hours with people, and I've only worked with the Indigenous community, so people who identify as First Nations, Métis. I haven't had any Inuit patients, but I worked in downtown Hamilton at Dédouada Desne's AHAC, and then after fasting, my first fast, I got a message that I needed to go out to Bekedwanong. So that's where I went, and so now I'm in that space with that community. And when I got there, I've been there for 1.5 years, and somebody texted me the other day, and they said, "You're finally an islander." I didn't really know what that meant, but I think that the gossip has started, and that no. When I moved down there, I started dating a community member. Bad idea, but he has a reputation that's not so good. So yeah, now I'm learning about the dynamics of our communities and some of the not so good things and sitting with the people as individuals, right? And then also being in the community and witnessing the community. You just come to these insights of why we are where we are, or why the community is where it is. And I heard, and I can't verify this, but I heard that Bekedwanong, or where I'm working, has the highest percentage of residential school survivors. I don't know if that's true, but it makes a lot of sense when I'm sitting with people, and there's a lot of my clients who have stories of those places, and they don't often share with me, and I never ask. They'll just say, "Oh yeah, I went there." But it's always those clients that I find have a lot more burden of illness. And this is just anecdotal evidence, right? It's just from my experience. But the individuals who've had residential school experiences and have never spoken of it and hold it inside of themselves are the ones that have the most illness in their bodies. And so that always piqued my curiosity, because I thought, well, why is that? And there was this big feeling like they needed to get it out somehow, and that their body could start to heal if they could process that experience. But I don't know the answer to that. I'm just giving this for you to ponder. But illnesses like fibromyalgia, which we hear a lot of in our communities, which is like pain, like physical pain in the body, in the soft tissues of the body, so like muscles, tendons, connective tissue, with like insomnia and like being sad, and those things fluctuate. So that label is given to a lot of people who have suffered in those places, and I always imagine that it could be the experience that they're holding in the tissues of their body, right? And it's also the most difficult thing as a doctor to treat, because we don't have any magic pills for that. Although there's a list of pills they like us to try, but they don't often work. So our approach to healing this stuff needs to be a lot different. And I acknowledge that, that right now in our nations, the Western approach to healing people is so narrow that we're not actually able to do what we need to do to help our people be well with that approach only, right? So there's health centers and AHACs and CHCs that are established in our nations, but they mostly adopt the Western approach. And that's what's been happening over, as far as I know, many years. Although some of these places have a traditional healing program within them, right? But the traditional healers are not valued the same way in a monetary sense. And they're also not given the same amount of time with people. And there's not a lot of communication between the doctors and the traditional people, the people with the knowledge of how we know to heal ourselves. So anyway, this is just what I'm seeing in my work. And where I work now at the CHC, we have a traditional healing program. But that just means that 1 week a month, we have a person who identifies themselves as a helper come into our space and maybe do ceremonies or one-on-one appointments. And then they maybe come back months and months later. And I'm always asking the question, like, you know, how is that continuity, right? Because I get to see my clients as much as I like to help them along a journey. And what I really need is someone else who has a different kind of knowledge right here next to me doing the same thing with the same person as they want it to be, right? So right now we're trying, well, I don't know who's we, but I just keep speaking about this to people I meet, to the people who are administrators, and saying, can we get more funding for these? For the people that know how to help our people? And you know, I'd be even willing to give up some of my dollars for them. But how do we do that, right? Because it's a more balanced approach that we need, right? We need. So if I go back a little bit, this is another way that I understand healing. I think that all human beings, no matter where you're from, like us as human beings, we're just this physical thing, but we have the power to like choose for ourselves. We have the power to move our bodies. We have this power, incredible power, to actually create our future, to create our present, and it's just like the colonized way has just diminished that belief. Like, it's so I almost see like there's this disempowerment. Like if you're a human being that doesn't believe that you are powerful, you know, that's the worst thing for you. Like if you don't know it and you don't feel it and you don't believe it and nobody around you is telling you this or helping you along that way, then it might be a struggle for you. And it's not mystical or magical. It's just spirit, right? Energy. And I use just words, the English words that we have. But I do believe that every human being is capable of whatever it is that they need. And if they had the support and the lived experience of how to be and walk that way, then they would move along a good path. But do I think that right now everybody has access to that kind of encouragement and support? No. And even the people who are, you know, in supportive roles, might not know that about themselves, right? So like the people helping have to be well, right? And we're all on a journey, right? So as a doctor, I'm a helper, and I learned very quickly that if I don't help myself, then I can't help anybody, right? And to be aware of yourself and your own wellness in the present moment all the time, and then making good choices to keep yourself well along the way, despite everything around you, is kind of the way to be well. And so I don't even think of wellness as I mean, it has to do with past, present, future, but for me, if I want to stay really well, I can't look too far ahead and I can't look too far behind, right? I just have to stay right here, right now, right? Like, how do I feel right in this moment? How's my body feeling? Am I hungry? Does something hurt? Like, I always have to ground myself right here, because I find that if I start to think about everything external and all the responsibilities and all the things I'm supposed to be doing, that feeling is overwhelming. You know, it just makes me want to hide under a rock. And motherhood taught me about that when I became a mom. And I became a mom in a way that I wasn't expecting. Like, I always expected I would have a partner and have support, but I didn't. And every day was like, I can't think about it. I can't think about how much responsibility this is. I can't even think about tomorrow. I just have to think about right now. What does the baby need right now? And that's how I learned to just stay. She taught me how to just stay with myself in the moment with her, right? So like children are obviously a big teacher. And I never spoke in front of crowds like this before I became a mother. And that's just not, I don't know if that's coincidence, but she taught me how to be okay just being with myself, which helped me to stand in front of all you people, right? And not get too scared or self-conscious. Anyway, when I present, I just go with what comes to me, but you look like you're all engaged, so we're doing okay. And you know, I went to school for a really long time, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about Western medicine and how they understand it, how that direction, the intellect, right, the evidence-based medicine, and how they pick everything apart and look at it just in isolation and what it does, right? And I really value that knowledge. I think it's really important. But I also recognize that things don't exist in isolation. Like, I realize, like, everything is connected. We're all connected to each other. And as women, we're connected to the water and the moon and the earth. And someone could have told me that 10 years ago, and I would have not understood what they meant, you know? But I see it differently now. Anyway, can you imagine if I said that to one of my colleagues, though? Like, about how the moon actually regulates our moon time? Like, they'd be like, what? Like, why is that cycle 28 days? Well, they look at it so differently than we look at it. And then, and then there's like those pills that regulate our moon time as women, right? And as a woman, you don't learn this unless you've gone through it with an oral contraceptive or hormone pills. Like, they can actually just regulate your moon time with chemicals, and that's okay. I did that for many years of my life. But now that I don't do it that way, I know what it feels like to be a being regulated by the contraceptive pills and a being regulated by creation. They're just different experiences, right? All the women are looking at me. I'm always like, when's my moon coming? Oh, I just have to look up. Oh, soon. I can feel it. So in relation to the residential school experience, and that disconnection from our power, this all comes together in the fact that, I look at a lot of evidence. There's a lot of, right now in our nations, it's like, oh, we have more chronic disease than every other nation. We have more cancer than every other nation. And that is true. However, I do believe that it is the chronic stress of the disempowerment that is actually creating all of this illness. So, the emotions are really connected to your gut. So and if you're a human who has felt a lot of emotions or not tried to feel your emotions, you might get your bowels might get upset. You might sweat, or your heart might race, or there's all kinds of things your body does in reaction to something else. So when we become stressed, our bodies suppress our immune system. Our immune system I describe as like the soldiers in our body that fight the things off that shouldn't be there. Whether that's our own body cells or foreign things like bacteria and viruses, and so all the little creatures in creation we can't see that come inside of us and live with us. Some of them live in harmony and some of them don't. But our immune system, so our own built-in system, is the one that's like watching out for us, And if that one that watches out for us is shut down or suppressed, because the emotions or all of the things that regulate how we feel, that suppresses, or that releases cortisol, which is the stress hormone. The stress hormone suppresses our immune system. So then we just, we're more susceptible to things getting in and wearing out, and that's how I see it anyway. And I think it's a human issue. It's not just an indigenous issue. All humans are susceptible to the same things. It's just that given our history and the legacy of that history, more people are suffering with the kinds of things that lead to chronic diseases, so autoimmune diseases, so rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and Crohn's and all these things related to how the immune system works against us sometimes. And then the cancers, I work with Cancer Care Ontario, and I'm not speaking on their behalf right now. That's just one of the hats that I wear. And I got into that role because my mom passed away from a metastatic stage 4 colon cancer that was caught too late, right? And I thought, what the heck? How did that happen? And I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to work for Cancer Care Ontario, and I'm going to, I don't know, make it better for one more family. Maybe we'll get somebody screened earlier, or I don't know. You just go and you lose a loved one and you join a fight, right? Whatever that fight is. So now I've had to look at cancer a lot. How our people are suffering from certain kinds of cancers more than everybody else. And then why is that? Looking at all those questions and trying to understand how we, lose less people, detect cancer earlier, but then realizing the organized. So Cancer Care Ontario is it's like an organized structure. It's kind of a corporate thing. They have a lot of money, they employ a lot of people, and their heavy focus is on screening. I have a question here. What causes colon cancer? Okay, that's a really big answer, but there's a very, very small amount of colon cancer that is genetic, which means you inherit something from your predecessors. That's very, very small. And you would know that because, well, you might not know it, but you would have a lot of polyps in your colon, which are like little growths. And you might know that because a family member had a colonoscopy and they had a bunch of polyps. And you go get your colonoscopy and you got a bunch of polyps. So that's more an inherited, those polyps, I call them like skin tags or moles inside the colon. They're just like little growths. Over time, they can develop into cancer. So that's one way. I'll get you in a second there. But like all cancers, cancer is our own, okay, this is what I understand, so don't take it as truth, like just see what it feels like to you. So this is what I was taught in medical school anyways, that the cancer is just your own cells. The thing that tells our cells how to divide, like replicate, is DNA, right? It's the instruction to the cells on how to live and how to die. The cell loses its ability to die. The instructions go wrong within the DNA, and then those cells can't die, so they keep living and growing. That's a tumor. So cancer, as I understand, is just an error in division and replication of cells, and you're more likely to get errors in division when you have, so imagine you are, like anytime if you had like a pile of stones, right, and you divided it 1,000,000 times over, eventually just in the process of doing something, you make a mistake, right? So that just happens when cells are dividing quickly, they can just get an error. Now normally the immune system, or our soldiers that look around, will find the error and fix it. So in any moment, we could have cancer cells, but our bodies eat it up and get rid of it, usually. This answer could go on forever, but things that cause our cells to replicate quickly, damage. So like, the colon requires a certain diet to stay well and healthy and moving, right? So foods that slow our bowel or irritate our bowel over and over and over and over will irritate that lining, hey? And it divides and divides and divides to heal itself. And then at some point it makes an error when it heals. And if our immune system misses it, it has a chance to grow. And so that tumor just grows and pushes everything out of its way, and it can hitch a ride through the bloodstream to somewhere else and grow some more. So there is a lot of fear of cancer, and certainly it's a horrible illness, but at the same time, it's our own cells, right? That's one way to look at it. And I find that empowering, because if it's our own self, maybe there's power within our own self, right? But how do we access that power, Does that answer your question? What is colon cancer? It's a tumor in the colon, is the simple answer. You had a question?
Well, I was just trying to think of an analogy of that would be the polyps would be the bad cells. And your immune system is fighting that. And it creates these polyps to isolate them from our body. But then if the polyp grows, then...
So a polyp literally, can I draw on this board? It really just means like, here's your surface of your bowel, and then you get this like growth, kind of like a freckle or a skin tag or a mole. And this is already like an abnormal way for it to grow, right? And that usually happens from irritation. So like things moving through the bowel that are just irritating, like pressure-wise, like chemical-wise. So it'll start to grow abnormally. That's a polyp. It's not cancer, right? But if it continues that way and keeps getting irritated, because now it's sticking out into a space it shouldn't be in, right? So it's going to keep getting hit by poop, and it's going to like bleed and stuff, and you're going to just keep getting irritated until possibly one of those errors is cancerous. So the cells can't stop growing. They don't know how to stop. So they keep growing, make a big tumor, right? So that's the whole basis of colon cancer screening, is they're looking for little tiny spots of blood coming in your poop from the irritation from this possible thing. Yeah. So not all polyps are cancer, but they can become cancer. So people who get many polyps in their bowel, they say, oh, get your colonoscopy every year or 2 years. And they go in with a little device and they clip them all off and burn them, which is irritating. So, you know, just for food for thought. But so I work for the cancer system, but I don't necessarily believe in all of their work. But I'm there to ask questions.
So would that organization you're part of be more towards Western medicine?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So they are all Western medicine, right? So they do this major screening programs, right? Breast cancer screening, cervical cancer screening, which is for women, and colon cancer screening. Those are their 3 screening programs that you can go get screened for free, and then, you know, and then if you get screened and you get a positive result, you get thrust into the system if you choose, right, to be treated, or, you know. So, I mean, within the cancer system right now in Ontario, there's the Aboriginal Cancer Control Unit. So they do have a group of Indigenous people led by Alethea Kiweosh from Walpole Island. She's been doing this work for 6 years to have our presence within that system, which means, so I'm in that Aboriginal Cancer Control Unit. So my responsibility, according to that, is to help our communities understand what cancer is and explain how they can approach that system or use that system if they so choose to, right? But we don't deal with like the other approaches to cancer. And anytime I ask them about that, they kind of, like, I don't, yeah.
So what you're saying then is you have to use Western medicine for cancer. You can't go off and use...
Well, no, as a human being, you can use whatever choice you want to use. The thing is, the cancer system is covered. You know, a lot of the alternative therapies for cancer, if you even have access to them, you know, they're quite expensive. So the publicly funded system is mostly a Western approach. If you want to use traditional medicines and you know people who work with plants and know energy and know healing, awesome. I always encourage people to use that. But there always tends to be a lot of fear about not using Western medicine, right? People, well, what if... I don't, at least for my mom, right? She went for the chemotherapy and for the surgery because she trusted that way more, you know, than our way. But she didn't have any knowledge, right? Or that was ripped away from her. So, yeah, I mean, everyone has their own story. Question in the back. I mean, I can't like pick 2 individuals right now with the same exact cancer and the same exact story or anything, but what I can say is that I have seen people cured from cancer with our ways only, and I have seen people cured from cancer from Western ways. So I know that both approaches are effective. Pardon? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So our, you know, traditional, the word traditional I not have issue with, but so like human beings as connected to the earth, to the plants, to creation, right? I believe that power can do anything, you know, and I've seen it do anything. And I've seen Western ways do amazing things. So I tend to want to focus on how amazing all approaches are, you know. Western medicine right now has a lot of faults, but it has a lot of strengths, you know. We just need, and I encourage my clients just to find out what it is that they want, what they believe is going to work for them, and then I try to get them there anyway. The issue I face is I wish more people had access to you know, plants, you know, to people who use energy, to teachings, to knowledge, to songs. You know, I wish people had more access to the things that we know work. Yeah. Did everyone hear the question?
No.
So she said, why do you think that Western medicine doesn't see it, what you see, in that healing power? Oh, I have a comment.
Because the white man don't believe in believing in spirits.
Right.
They think it's witchcraft.
Yeah.
It's not.
So
They're there to help.
the Western approach is much from the intellect, right? So like they're very much on tangible things you can feel and observe with your eyes and with your, you know, and they, you know, the settlers or the white nation, they were colonized thousands or hundreds of years before we were, right? But if they knew that their ancestors over in Europe understood the same way, they knew land, they knew plants, they knew how to heal. It's just that they're farther away from that ancestrally. It's like way back there somewhere. And they've probably never had any experience, right? If they're surrounded by people that don't believe and don't practice and don't acknowledge spirit their whole lives, like they're not going to see it, right? And because that's from my own experience too. I didn't see it for many years.
Would it be safe to say that because the settlers, the Europeans, or whatever, have religion, that spirit, the native people, we have sun, the earth, that's our beliefs?
Right.
Wouldn't it be safe to say that they both had spirit?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment about religion because I don't want to push anybody's buttons. Right, so religion, I've been to church a couple of times recently because I'm on this, like, I want to understand, right? I want to learn about Jesus and I want to understand his story just out of, again, curiosity, you know? So I went into these religious institutions and I sat and I listened and so I'm on my own journey of trying to understand about religion versus spirituality, right? Because I think they're two different things. I think that sometimes religion can be separate from spirit because it can become like a set of rules. I don't know. I'm talking too much about it already.
So I see how both approaches are kind of interconnected in a way to help someone with their health. Like as a family physician, how do you find that balance, or do you find there's challenges with the balance of westernized medicine and like traditional or interconnected?
So each individual that sits in my space, like I don't find it challenging because I just let that person lead wherever they're at, you know, however they want it. Like most of the time people coming to see me, they want me to be a doctor. They want me to tell them what to do and what medicine to take. Then there's some people that don't want me to do that, you know. They just come to talk and challenge me. You know, I have people that just come in to tell me how terrible Western medicine is. And I listen, you know. So it's just about where they're at and how they, you know, getting to the understanding of why someone's in your office, right? Are you here because you want to be here? Is there something that you need from me? You know, and then there's this set of rules of what I'm supposed to do for every person per year, right? But I tend to ignore what my college tells me because I know that that evidence wasn't gathered and collected from my people, you know? So I can't really act according to how they tell me in a community that has nothing to do with how they believe, right? Which can get me in trouble with my college real easily, but I'm okay with that. I don't mind trouble.
And he, they diagnosed him with lung cancer. And it was up in his lung, upper right. And she said it's as the size of this. And so anyway, when they told him that, and how you are now is exactly how that doctor is. She was very gentle with him. You know, she didn't push chemo, she didn't push this, she didn't push that. And, you know, upon listening to her and how she was listening to him, you know, that made it so much different for my brother. You know, and she in turn asked him, what would you like to do? It's up to you.
Yeah.
And my brother-in-law, he's 97, and he goes, I don't want to bother. He says, I've lived this long already. He says, just leave it alone. You know, and he's still here. And they still come and see him and talk to him at his home. And yes, he is stubborn. And, but, you know, we talked to him about, you know, what they're explaining to him. And he still continues to say, I've come this far already. He says, I will go how I want to go. You know, and when he sit there, you know, listening to him, and he shares, you know, what he is going through. He was told not to smoke. He still smokes. You know?
That's one I struggle with, telling people not to smoke. I often don't do that, you know, I just,
It wasn't his doctor, it was the people from the camp.
oh yeah. Okay, yeah.
So, he still continues to smoke. Yeah, and he shares so much knowledge about he's bringing everything forward.
Beautiful.
And he talks about his mother. So for us, as Krishna people, that's a sign of, you know, he's getting himself ready. You know, and
Thank you for sharing. Sorry you all didn't get to hear that, but she was sharing a story about her brother and his choice, you know, just having a choice and how he wanted to move forward with his diagnosis and doing well when he chose to do nothing at all. So I'm coming up to my time here, and I hope that something you heard or something I said felt good or felt right or felt encouraging, because that's the whole point of being in each other's space, I think. So I just want to say miigwech for having me today, and I'm really easy to find. Like, you can Google my name and find me anywhere. Instagram, I don't know, email. You can find my contact number if you have any, ever want to come visit the island, or I always offer, you know, to share space with people, and I hope to see you on the road ahead, and I hope you all are on a good path and stay well or get well. So miigwech.
Don't go far. Chimiwech to Dr. Samantha Boushart Nishnawekwe. Stay up here, please, good doctor. Des Moines Tech Health Center is very proud to have all of you here, and very proud and happy to have special guests, especially women that I was talking about earlier today. So on that note, we want to bestow a show of gratitude to Samantha Nishnawekwe on behalf of Des Moines Tech Health Center. That was it. Chimigachi.